Hi.
Oh, again. Ray ended the last segment with this reference to John 12:42 and 43 from the New English Bible, where it says, "For all that, even among those in authority, a number believed in him," that is Christ, "but would not acknowledge him on account of the Pharisees, for fear of being banned from the synagogue. For they valued their reputation with men rather than the honor which comes from God." And then Ray goes on, "Though undoubtedly having held a preeminence equal to or greater than any of these, Saul of Tarsus was willing to lose his prominence in the system for which he had labored so forcefully, willing to leave a major religious affiliation of his people, and to associate with persons whose sole big event was a baptism of thousands of believers at the start of their religious history, but with nothing comparable during the rest of their entire lifetime. They had no national or international assemblies, no building projects, in fact had no buildings of their own dedicated for religious purposes, engaged in no major productions, placed no emphasis on numerical factors, and had no centralized or extensive administrative setup, as both Scripture and history testify."
In striking contrast to the course of many, Paul says in Galatians 1 in the Jerusalem Bible, "So now, whom am I trying to please, man or God? Would you say it is men's approval I am looking for? If I still wanted that, I should not be what I am, a servant of Christ. When God called me through his grace and chose to reveal his Son in me, I did not stop to discuss this with any human being. Nor did I go up to Jerusalem to see those who were already apostles before me, but I went off to Arabia at once and later went straight back to Damascus. Even when after 3 years I went up to Jerusalem to visit Cephas and stayed with him for 15 days, I did not see any of the other apostles. I only saw James, the brother of the Lord. And I swear before God that what I have just written is the literal truth." End of quote.
He certainly never fell into the class of those of whom Jude writes that those were ready with flattery for other people when they see some advantage to it. That's Jude verse 16 in the Jerusalem Bible. Yet such flattery and efforts to impress men in authority are remarkably common within the witness organization, and concern for gaining or maintaining organizational favor and position is often obvious in the conduct of a considerable percentage of elders and traveling representatives. In large measure, it is such concern for position that gives the organization the degree of power and control over them that it has. Because of it, men will even enforce policies that they believe are wrong in order to retain organizational favor. They do this at the cost of their freedom and moral integrity. These motivating factors are not restricted to men of secular success and ability. They often apply with equal force to those of far more humble background, even the underprivileged. The Watchtower's organizational arrangement may allow these to achieve a marked elevation in social status by virtue of diligence in meeting organizational goals, zeal in the program of activity, the sheer force of hours they report.
All of this may pave the way to eventual eldership. They may now deliver lengthy talks before audiences of 100 or more persons, whereas without the official position they hold, they might find it difficult to get a dozen persons to listen to them for any period of time. Like those of more impressive background, these may feel hesitant to do anything or say anything that might jeopardize the status they now enjoy. Christianity should appeal to the humble, should give them a sense of worth, but its appeal should not be on the basis just described, nor should their sense of personal worth be measured by such man-made standards. If they think seriously on the matter, they might recognize that the apparent appreciation shown them is essentially for what they can give to the furtherance of organizational goals, not what they themselves are as spiritual persons. There is a big difference in this. Yet many choose to ignore that difference for the apparent benefits received. This, too, is not Christian freedom, but a form of self-induced bondage.
In any self-examination, a major question then is whether we have been willing to face the reality, however painful, of our situation and make a conscious decision, one that is genuinely our own. Avoiding the decision is no solution. Charles Davis, referred to in an earlier chapter, that's the Catholic priest who actually left the Catholic faith, he makes an accurate analysis in saying, quote, "Happiness is not quiescence, that is, inaction, gained by a narrowing of consciousness. It demands that a man accept the autonomy proper to him as a free person. Just to follow what others do or say and wait passively upon events is to live a diminished personal existence. To think with honesty, he has to face doubts and questionings that go deep and affect fundamentals. The temptation in this situation is just to drift, to renounce a deliberate personal choice and allow oneself to be carried along by what others are thinking, doing, and saying." And that's the end of the Davis quote.
After stating that, while some simply drift out of their religion along with others who are leaving, many remain in their religion because of the same lack of self-determination and conscious decision. Davis adds again, continued submission to external authority is more comfortable than making personally a radical decision. But the inability or refusal to be free eventually brings weariness of life, and it excludes genuine happiness. To endure the upheaval and discomfort of rending, but truly personal decision is in the long run better. I am not setting myself up as a model, nor do I think myself more courageous than other men. The question of courage never entered my mind until people wrote to me on that theme after I announced my decision. What dominated my thoughts at the time was the sheer necessity for me of a personal choice. I had to confront my doubts, ask myself what I did in truth believe, and then act in harmony with my genuine convictions, whatever the consequences. Had I let things slide, balked the issue, and refused to act decisively, with the vague hope that all my difficulties would eventually resolve themselves, I should have destroyed my real self and lapsed by default into a diminished state." End of his quote. His experience and feelings parallel not only my own, but those of many others I know. Now that sounded very much familiar to me. Like it's I don't know, it was how I felt, was I couldn't just ignore things. I had to face them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a matter of courage. It was just, either you take this act or you live a lie.
Yeah. It would be a hard choice either way, and it was. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it was for Davis, and it sure was for Ray Franz. I relate too to his discussion of the pride factor here. Mm-hmm. That contrary to what you expect when you're a Jehovah's Witness, when you're told constantly about the pride that is engendered in the clergy of Christendom, and every time they're painted in the Watchtower, they're always impressive looking, proud looking men.
Yeah.
But the truth is that there's accountability in Christendom. Mm-hmm. In our experience, the clergy are not prideful. We have met exceptions to that. We've met arrogance among the clergy, but they are a very small minority of the clergymen we've met. But his point about what is engendered in the way of pride within the Watchtower itself, even on a local level, you don't have to rise very high to be a victim of pride. And a lot of the local elders meet this description here of men who have only got a self-worth that's attached to their position within the Christian congregation, as we call it.
So they might be just, a common worker in a factory, but suddenly now they're in a position where they feel they're looked up to, and they're, people are listening to them and coming to them for help. That can create in them a sense of pride.
No, that wasn't the case in the congregations I served in. I was generally pleased with the men I served with. I don't think these were major factors, but I have heard of and seen cases where men were just using their status to stroke their own ego, it would seem,
And
without much sense of the shepherd's true calling, which of course is to nourish and take care of the weaker ones.
And part of the problem is that the requirements for becoming an elder are almost exclusively how many hours do you put in.
Yeah.
You know, so if it's not a matter of this is a person who people already go to and get one information from because they can see some spiritual maturity in this person.
Or sympathy.
Or sympathy, yeah. So a kindness, a shepherd's heart. It's a different reason why they've been made an elder. So they might not have the required talents.
The human talents.
Yeah.
Not to mention the abilities in Scripture. So again, it contrasts with the Christian clergy that we have met. They are trained. They're all trained.
Yeah. They have a certain level of education and experience with people. And they're picked by the congregation.
Yeah, that's a big factor.
So I think
they have a contract with the congregation.
So they can't afford to be bullies. They have to do their work and really care for the congregation.
In most Protestant churches, that is certainly the case, and even in the Catholic and Orthodox churches where priests are appointed and designated for assignment, there's great care given as to their location. And within many churches, the older churches especially, there are multiple pastors, and they're all trained. So it does lend to a certain peer pressure, where you have a number of people at your level, and they're all approved by the congregation. So there's weaknesses, of course, in that arrangement too. But this stigma that attaches to the clergy, that they are prideful, they're the kind of men that Jesus Christ condemned.
Yeah, they're almost, in your mind as a witness, you almost think clergy, Pharisee.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like an immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so.
No.
So next time, personal relationship, the key factor. And we'll put a link up to Charles Davis in the earlier chapter in Ray's book, where the chapter is called The Shepherds of the Flock. Charles Davis is prominent among the examples Ray uses of men who have had to make a conscientious choice, great sacrifice to themselves and their situation and their station in life.
Right. Okay.